Star Trek vs. Star Wars. First episode, Rebels. A Imperial patrol ship was deep in the unknown regions of space on an explorational mission to look for new hyperspace lanes. For the last 2 months, the ship had searched for hyperspace lanes unsuccessfully. Most new hyperspace lanes were nothing more than death traps. Finally, a new hyperspace lane was found to a new stable system. Imperial protocol is to look for any Class M planets or rare minerals. If any unknown space-capable races are found and determined to be of a high-tech level origin, Imperial protocol is to leave and not have first contact. All ships are to return to the core systems and report their findings. The patrol ship found 4 new planets and one was a Class M. The last jump led to a planet called Tal Prime. Talium Prime was where a warp-capable civilization with a small army laid. The scout ship's scanners picked up a small fleet of unknown design, starships, and a largely populated civilization. Imperial protocol was not to respond to any hails and to return to the Empire. Upon returning to normal hyperspace lanes, the ship was ambushed by a Nebulon B escort frigate. The Nebulon B is twice the size of this ship and has twice the firepower of the scout ship and has 3 times the capacity for fighters. The small rebel fleet was able to take this ship with no problem. After evaluating the data aboard the scout ship, the new hyperspace lane and the 4 new planets and the Class M planet, as well as the unknown alien race of Talanians, were pulled from the records. After exploring the new Class M planet, the rebels began creating a new base. More and more rebel cells were called to this new base, and eventually the rebel fleet was established on this new planet over the next few years. The new rebel world became known as Freedom. The complete Home One fleet was established here, and a new city and space dock was completed with fighter facilities and vehicle factories, as well as one large shipyard. This was the first time in the Rebels' history they had the opportunity to field large fleets of vehicles and starfighters on a large scale. This gave the Rebels the ability to go head-to-head with some of the smaller Imperial fleets and systems located in the Outer Rim worlds. Over the next 3 years, the rebels were able to attack the Empire and return to a fully operational space station for repairs. This led to the rebel fleet being over 200 ships strong and over 1,000 fighters and vehicles and a standing army of 50,000 troops from all over the galaxy. This fleet did not go unnoticed. A Cardassian patrol ship was passing by the sector and was able to pick up the fleet from long-range scanners. A report was sent to the Central Command where a debriefing was done with the Obsidian Order and Tel Shiar. A away team was assembled that was genetically modified to look like the inhabitants of the planet. Spies were sent to the rebels' camps. Upon finding the large amount of robotic life forms, the Tel Shiar and the Obsidian Order immediately called their fleet to the neighboring sector. All ships in the neighboring sectors were called into a massive fleet of 60 Cardassian warships. All military ships, mostly aged warships or patrol ships protecting the borders. The fleet of the Obsidian Order and Tel Shiar fleet were both state-of-the-art warships, 10 warbirds, and 10 Cardassian Kelton-class heavy cruisers modified by the Tel Shiar, the same fleet seen in the Prime universe attacking the Dominion homeworld. With this new enemy, the Tel Shiar believed this to be the hidden base of the great enemy of the Zamvash Ralian leaders of the Tel Shiar. They believed any living synthetic life form will bring the end of the galaxy to all living organic life forms, and nothing else mattered to them. Any kind of thinking machine needed to be destroyed. The Cardassian fleet was assembled over the next week, and all cloaked ships began beaming over bombs to the engines of the rebel starships with small cloaking devices to hide them from the rebel scanners. Most of the large ships they found with its shields down while taking on supplies or persons were targeted first. For a few weeks this tactic was done, before the mission to eradicate the machine infestation and their companions. The plan was to decloak the fleet at the same time as the Cardassian fleet warped into the sector, simultaneously setting off the bombs placed on the reactors of the large ships. The only true problem the fleet had was the fact that the region of space was so far away from any truly important location, with the Cardassian government misunderstanding how hyperspace works, thinking the enemy fleet was able to appear anywhere they want. The Cardassian government would not allow their main force to move from key systems or stations. This fleet was mostly aging starships from the Federation Cardassian border wars, and only a handful of Galor-class warships were in this fleet. The Cardassians did not really understand hyperspace at this point and made this false calculation mostly out of ignorance and arrogance. The fleet began attacking simultaneously with bombs, and the cloaked fleet was able to catch the rebel fleet completely off guard. The first minutes of the battle were brutal for the rebels, taking heavy casualties. The large Mon Calamari ships began attacking back with turbo lasers and launching their fighters. As the ion cannons hit the enemy starships, the shields began to overload and the ship's systems began to fail all over the warbird fleet, just like seen within the Breen. Lots of small fighters began attacking the large warbirds, causing considerable damage to the unshielded warbirds and Cardassian warships affected by the ion weapons. The warbirds made short work of the escort freighters and frigates and other cruisers. Only the one Mon Calamari cruiser made it out, as well as a dozen or so small warships. The Cardassian weapons struggled to lock onto the small fighters, but their spiral wave heavy cannons made short work of the rebel starships. The warbird fleet had made a second fleet to destroy the starbase, as well as known makes itself towards the planet with the support of the Cardassian fleet. The planet was particularly shielded by a large planet shield, and base was defended by a couple of planet defense ion cannons, and one planetary disruptor destroyed the first ship that came into range. The fleet pulled back to a safe distance. The cloak fleet moved into position to attack the defense of the planet. Had pulled off, Hideki-class starships began to run attack of the planet's surface, distracting the weapon systems of the rebels for just a few seconds, allowing the fleet to decloak and destroy the planetary defenses, killing almost everything and everyone. After an initial attack, it was decided that ground forces would attack all remaining ground forces and bomb any rebels into submission. Thousands of survivors fought back, town by town, city by city, over months of guerrilla warfare taking place, with rebels using jamming technology to stop transporters from beaming troops into space. This came far too late into the battle. After the aftermath of the war, the rebels were executed or enslaved or tortured for information, and some were made into concubines for Cardassian goals, if they were lucky. The Cardassians had completely and utterly broke the rebels. Torture, violence, slavery, anything and everything they could think of. The same tactics used on the Bajorans they used on the rebels. Once they learned of the technology difference between the rebels and the Cardassian Union, they began plans for an invasion by using the very weapons that the rebels carried. The Mon Calamari cruisers were to be modified to carry Galar-class cruisers so they can take over other planets they felt that were inadequately capable of defending themselves. But they would learn their lesson.